Hello and welcome to the Purple Jam podcast. Today we have Ben Levin with us. Hello Ben, how you doing and what are you wearing?
Hi, hey, how's it going? I'm doing well. I'm wearing the appropriate amount of pants and a shirt. The shirt is brown. The pants, they're green.
Fantastic combo.
Thank you, thank you.
Cool, it's very informative.
I'm like a forest indoors.
Yes. First things first, congratulations on your most recent album, Our Place. It's
Thank you.
absolutely brilliant. I've been listening to it a lot. I know Matt has as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh, thanks so much.
The first thing I kind of want to dive into is I saw when you released it that you posted it's a concept album and perhaps the first one you're properly kind of chuffed with. Could you explain the concept a little bit?
Sure. Well, yes, I've written mostly concept albums up till now, and typically there's some low point at any given like flow, like something that takes it out of feeling like one cohesive story or one cohesive piece, and sometimes the story kind of messes up the music, or I have a lot of like there's like little things that I'm critical about in the old ones, but this one is about uh, our place in this world, in this universe, and this like the fact of mortality and the way that sort of um, that can inspire us to look beyond ourselves and try to find meaning. And it's often the case that the meaning that you need is much simpler than it would seem, and it's right in front of you. And um, so it's looking at that through the story of when my dad had a heart operation, and I was in the waiting room, and it's sort of like a zoomed in, um, super slow motion take on the day of waiting for to find out how the operation went, and the night like the night basically what happened was we were waiting for the operation to be done, then the operation was done, then we went home and went to sleep, and overnight was going to be like the time when either he's doing it, he's stable or not, and then the next day we'd find out when we woke up. And so it's like about that sleepless night and the waiting and the thoughts that inspired. um, but I tried to make it kind of speak to this universal thing that everyone faces, which is if things go according to plan, if everything goes like the average human lifespan goes, then we all have to bury our parents eventually. And that is sort of an opportunity in a way. The fact of that is an opportunity for people to empathize with each other, because I don't think it's going to be that easy for anyone, whether you're losing your parents after a lifetime of loving them and having a great relationship, or if they're disappearing when you have a bad relationship and you never get the chance to do anything about it. Just all the various forms of your parents disappearing is just this thing that we share with as people. Just it's like a life stage, and I don't know how to prepare for it, which makes people who are very far away and have a very different life, seem close. I guess is that we share that.
Right. That's a really engaging and kind of personal concept. Writing about such personal things, do you ever feel like you should perhaps filter anything?
I think that it counterintuitively, the more specific you get to your own story, the more relatable the story becomes, because the little details when they're in a song, when they're in lyrics, they won't be details in lyrics that feel right to me, at least. I'm not going to be writing lyrics like, my dad's name is Stephen. He was born in 1933, and then when he grew older, he became a blah 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 blah, and now I have this relationship with him. It's not going to be like when you put very specific personal details into song form, it tends to be magicified by the music that's behind it, and not feel like prose. It doesn't feel like you're just stating a Wikipedia page, basically. And for that reason, when you get really specific in a song, you actually just get more real emotionally. The musical emotion landscape and the lyrics are very easy to identify for a listener, because they come from this very intense personal space. Everybody is intensely personal with themselves. In fact, the only person you ever even sort of understand is you. If you think about all the ways that people don't know what you're thinking, and all the things you say that people don't fully understand because you've diluted them into words. And so if you're writing music that adequately describes that super personal you, it's more likely to resonate and have like coincidental similarities to other people's super personal experience.
To bacteria, I'm a place. To an ant, I'm a natural disaster. To a stranger, I'm a face. And to our planet, I'm a passenger.
Yeah, sure. So, moving slightly away from the conceptual side of things and a bit more just to the kind of practical musical stuff. I wanted to ask, because you have quite a lot of players on the record,
True.
and yeah, some great performances. So I was just interested to ask how tightly defined are all the parts. So, for example, there's some pretty intricate drum beats going on
Mm-hmm.
at different points in the album. Like how collaborative is that? Are you notating it, you know, note for
Right,
note,
right.
grace note, or do you sort of take it to the drummer and just be like, "This is the sort of thing I'm thinking." What would you come up with?
Yeah, it's very collaborative.
Okay.
I used to write every note in past albums that I would say aren't quite as good as this one. I used to write every note, but I've come to realize that the tradition of notation and what it does, it's it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages, just like recording. Everything you like, writing by recording has advantages and disadvantages. Writing with people and everyone having their own opinion has advantages and disadvantages. Like notation should be weighted equally as a composition method, but it was like the premier best technology for organizing sounds until the advent of like home recording studios.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so like so I used to be really big on notating every detail, because I felt like if I wanted to get super specific and get like something that's really focused and to my vision, that I would need to use notation. But now I found that that is still sometimes the case, but more often you can get even more specific with verbal explanations of what you want. Or in the case of this album, what I did for the drums was I made electronic drums for the whole album that I thought were good, but there's always a pretty good chance that if I send those parts over to the drummer in one of the drummers in one of my bands, that they will make it better. I mean, I've just experienced that in the past, so I assume the possibility, remains for this one. And so I sent all of those electronic parts with like rough mixes to Kyle Harris, who's the drummer on the album, and he's a person I play with a lot, and he's in Blue Man Group and stuff. So he's a fancy schmancy,
Oh,
very
awesome.
very good drummer, and he did exactly what I'd hoped, which is he really brought new life to the parts, and ultimately I edited down what he played to fit with the electronic stuff I had already written in, and so you get this nice hybrid effect that I couldn't have imagined if I hadn't brought it into his domain. And it's super specific to the songs because he was working off of these electronic parts that totally fit, and so it was like it was just like such a seamless thing. Then for a lot of the strings, I mean, for most of the strings, I just sent the recordings to Chris Baum, who's the violinist in Bent Knee, and he just did it. You know, I didn't really. He just knows what to do because we've been playing together since 2008, which is I guess 10 years. And so in that time, I know what good strings sound like when Chris does it. Like I know what he's gonna do more or less to make a string part work, and he knows what I think is good, and we just kind of agree on what things should be, and so that's really easy. But then the horns and all like the massive people that are like listed, you know, there's a choir and there's all this stuff. Most of that was them improvising with instructions,
Right.
and because I needed things to be like to not sound quantized to a page, and I'm not skilled enough at notation, I think, to create the effect of free flowing within bar lines. I mean, there are lots of composers who pull that off brilliantly, but it's not really my forte, and so I gave verbal instructions to lots of the musicians, all the horn players. We had a session of cello, two violins, tenor sax, bari sax, trumpet, and two pianos, and everyone singing all at once. And so in the song Bless the Decomposers, you're hearing, after a whole day of guided improvisation, you're hearing like one really good moment from that. So
Fab.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I really like that approach, sort of working closely with performers to get the
thanks.
result, as
Yeah,
opposed
yeah,
to
totally.
trying to find
Like
everything.
I recommend it to anyone who feels like serious about music because it just makes you less isolated to work that way, and everybody has challenges working with people like that. It might seem like it's very easy for me because I have so many different musicians on it, so I must have an abundance of players to work with, and I do have an abundance of players to work with, but it's because of a bunch of very difficult things like spending a lot of time arguing and spending a lot of time like compromising on it and like listening to other people's ideas when I think I know what's best. And like there's definitely a cost to reaching out to people and working with them. Like it is challenging. And for some people they're just not used to like basically they don't live in a musical community necessarily, and it's not like clear where to start if you want to go work with people, and so they put ads in Craigslist like, hey, looking for a drummer, I want to jam, and that can be a crapshoot, and sometimes they just get really bad experiences of jamming with people who don't care about music as much as them, or who don't play well, or who play a very different style and they can't really relate. But it's worth taking that journey there because the less you isolate yourself, the more I think creatively energized you can be in the long term, and the more you can learn and the faster you can learn about music. One thing people can do, because I know this podcast is speaking to musicians who are looking to expand and all that. One thing you can do is try to ask the question not like how can I get people to play my stuff, but how can I play people's stuff? Like, can I do nice things for musicians? Are there any things I can offer that are time consuming and something I can do myself that would be very helpful to another musician. And then, your local music school or whatever local musical community you can find, or a band you like, whatever it is, just start thinking in terms of how can I help other musicians, because that's how you build basically a musical relationship. It's from trying to bring out the best in someone else instead of it always being about you. And, they'll want to return the favor.